everybody, I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Jennie Murray, the president and CEO of the National Immigration Forum. Jennie, thank you so much for joining me once again.
Thanks for having me.
I want to talk today about a standoff between the courts and the Trump administration that's a real inflection point for the White House's hardline immigration policy. And this is the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He's a man who is from El Salvador originally. He came to the United States illegally in 2011. And in 2019, an immigration judge ruled he could not be deported back to El Salvador because he faced gang violence there. But last month in March, he was flown to El Salvador, deported there, and he's currently in prison. Initially, the Trump administration said, hey, this was a mistake. Now they're saying he is affiliated with the gang MS-13 and he is not coming back. I want to start off the conversation by getting your reaction to the moment we're in and this case in particular.
It is quite unprecedented, and we are extremely worried about this situation. Whether or not we are not familiar with Mr. Garcia's individual case. However, what we do very much know well is that the U.S. is a nation of laws. We are built on order and rule of law, and every individual is due process. It should be given due process, and in this case, Mr. Garcia was not. And the courts, the judicial system, is stepping in to offer the checks and balances that they should in our government. And they have asked that he come back. And so we are concerned to not see the administration follow through with that. It's also, indicative of the broader situation.
And let's talk about that legal fight that is underway. A district judge said that the Trump administration had to facilitate and effectuate Garcia's return. The Supreme Court took some issue with the word effectuate. They said that the Trump administration, they agreed 9-0. They have to facilitate the return. Effectuate, they said, needed to be defined with, quote, due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs. Both Garcia's team and the Trump administration is claiming victory here. Garcia's attorneys are saying, hey, this means you guys need to help him come back and come back now. The Trump team is saying this means what the Supreme Court is saying, that the power of foreign policy is in the hands of the president. What do you make of those interpretations?
Yeah, without getting into the legal counsel piece, which I do think is great for those attorneys to be digging into the semantics around each of those terms. But overall, I can speak to immigration law and what should be upheld. So every person who has been allowed to, who has come to the U.S., period, whether it's lawful or unlawful, actually, should be allowed through international or through immigration law, should be allowed to have their time in front of a judge to have their hearing and to be offered that due process. And so in this particular case, before there was a ruling on this individual, the individual was detained internationally, which is not protected under U.S. immigration law. We do not detain internationally, and was not given his time in court, was not able to sit and allow his attorneys to plead, as we hear in his case, that he's saying he's not a part of this gang. Whether that's true or not. Of course, we know our nation has the right to, apprehend individuals who are deemed dangerous, but they cannot be deemed dangerous until our system has worked. And in this case, our system did not work. This individual was not given his due process and was detained internationally. And the highest court of the law is saying he needs to be returned.
This moment has really been called a constitutional crisis. There's broader implications here when it comes to what you're saying, due process and immigration as a whole. What do you think are those implications?
Yeah, this is an implication for myself. I'm U.S. born. I don't know about you. I think those of us Americans who are U.S. born, this should also be a concern. Any patriotic American should be concerned. One of the backbones of the American experience is this amazing justice system we have, this rule of law. And that is still in my bones that if I am called into court, I will be given, a just process. I will have a hearing. And we have always said that all humans in our in our country should be given the same. And so if we start to allow administrations to be their own, judge and jury and to stay outside of the law, this sets up a precedent that is very concerning, not just for immigrants, but for all Americans. We really need to protect this moment.
There was a meeting between President Trump, some cabinet officials, as well as El Salvador's president earlier this week, and it got pretty contentious at one point because El Salvador's president was asked if he plans on returning Garcia. He said he didn't have the power to do that. That would essentially be tantamount to smuggling a terrorist. And then Secretary of State Marco Rubio jumped in and he said this: "I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people back to their country of origin." What do you make of the administration's argument there?
Without knowing Mr. Garcia's case fully as his attorney, we don't have access to, from what I understand from gleaning details publicly, of course, he had filed asylum for pending that ruling. Asylum is lawful in the U.S. So as a process where you U.S. and then you claim that you are unable to return because there is some credible fear. So in this case, that would have needed to be carried all the way through. He would have needed to be given his court date. Of course, our national security and enforcement experts could definitely continue to look at the individual case and then decide whether or not he's granted asylum, apprehend him if he is true. But all of those steps were skipped. And that's what we're concerned about. We do not, skip steps in the judicial process as Americans. We do not send people to other countries to be detained. That is against our immigration laws in the U.S. And it's just against who we are as Americans. This is not a humane payment. And so without knowing the details of his case, what we would like is that we want to make sure every person and gets their due process, and that we don't skip over this on the way that we have built in this really intricate immigration system to make sure that we do admit only those that are safe for our country here to contribute, and to remove those who are not.
And to your point, Garcia was here under the status of withholding of removal. He also had a work permit. His wife is a citizen. His child is a citizen. Pam Bondi, though, the Attorney General, said on Wednesday morning that the administration does not have any plans to bring him back. She said he is not coming back to our country, and that if he, meaning the president of El Salvador, wanted to send him back, we would give him a plane ride back. There was no situation ever where he was going to stay in this country. So when you're looking at this case in particular, what are you looking out for as the next steps? And then immigration overall, when it comes to the Trump administration, what are you looking out for there?
Yeah, well, first, be able to see him, as the Supreme Court has asked the administration to do, to back the U.S. to finish his process. The fact that he was given means that his asylum case is pending. The immigration court would like to hear his case, and so we need to finish. He may, very rightly so, not be admitted to the country. In fact, a large asylum case is admitted, but we need to continue the process and allow his families to be able to prepare for what those next steps are. But for immigration as a whole, we need to know that for enforcement, every country is allowed to enforce. We have always enforced. In fact, Democrats and Republicans alike have removed those that are a country. But we do have a system in play to protect us as Americans to catch folks who are truly batters. We need to trust that system and not speed it along. And right now what's happening is it's being sped along, even by, practitioners who are not very versed in the system that we've put in place. And therefore we're seeing some misses like this. We're seeing steps being skipped, and we are seeing lots and lots of testimonials of folks saying that they were not given due process, or a citizen green card holder and got an erroneous notice about self-deportation. So this is what happens when we don't trust our functioning we have in place, the practitioners that we have in place, and when we ask to speed it up. And to emphasize it, it's fine for any president to say that they want to focus on removals and enforcement. We applaud that. But we need to trust the individuals we have in place and take the necessary steps so that we can make sure that we remain pure, orderly, and yet humane.
I really appreciate your insight here. Jennie Murray, thank you so much for joining me again. You are welcome back anytime.
Thanks, Brittany. It's great to be with you.